critical value of getting regular bright light, ideally sunlight in your eyes within the first hour of waking, or if the sun isn't out when you wake up in the morning, to turn on a lot of bright artificial lights and then get sunlight in your eyes for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, depending on how cloudy it is, in the early part of the day. Absolutely outsized effects on mood and focus during the day and quality of sleep at night. Now, there's another sort of central tenet of getting great sleep and improving mood and focus throughout the day, and that's to avoid bright artificial light exposure to your eyes between the hours of about 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Now, leaving shift workers aside, and we have an entire episode devoted to shift work, most people are asleep at night and awake during the day, and you would be wise to avoid exposure of your eyes to bright artificial light between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. If you're going to use screens or artificial lights, dim them down as far as you can. Now, there are several studies that point to the fact that one of the major issues with getting bright light in your eyes between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. is that it has a negative impact on the so-called dopaminergic or dopamine circuits of the brain and body, which can enhance depression. That is, lead to ongoing lower mood and affect. So that's a reason to dim the lights or avoid bright lights between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. However, I and many others need to use artificial light and screens, sometimes even between the hours of 10 p.m. and midnight, or even midnight to 3 a.m., depending on what's going on in my life or your life. That may include you as well. Now, it turns out that there are powerful ways to offset some, not all, but some of the negative effects of viewing artificial lights between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is to simply adjust the overall brightness of your artificial lighting throughout the day and in the evening. So one of the issues nowadays that we're really facing is that people are simply not getting enough bright light in their eyes from sunlight or from other sources during the daytime, and they're getting far too much bright light in their eyes, largely from artificial sources, of course, in the evening and at night. Not just from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., but also in the evening hours from 6 to 10 p.m. and so on and so forth. So a very simple yet powerful solution that's supported by peer-reviewed research in humans is to try and make your indoor working and or home environment during the day as bright as possible. Now, if you can achieve that through direct sunlight, terrific. If you can get outside a lot during the daytime, terrific. But many people simply cannot. But most people do have some windows in their environment. I realize some don't, but most people do. And as a consequence, most people are using rather dim artificial lighting indoors during the day, and then very bright artificial lighting indoors in the evening and at night. That's a problem. And if you think about it, logically, you want to do the exact reverse. So it's been shown that if you simply increase the amount of bright artificial light that you are exposed to during the day, and remember, this is not an excuse to not get your morning sunlight viewing, but in addition to that, to make your indoor artificial lights very bright throughout the day, and then much dimmer from the hours of 6 p.m. until bedtime. Or if you can't do that, then maybe as soon as you get home from about 8 p.m. until bedtime, and then dim them way down between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. or off entirely. That's going to be a far better pattern for your sleep-wake cycles, focus, mood, etc., than what most people do, which is to have a few windows in their indoor working environment during the day and keep the indoor lights rather dim at a time when they need more photons, more light energy. And then in the evening when they get home, because it's dark outside, they tend to turn the lights much brighter. You actually want to do the reverse. Now, there's an even simpler solution, which is to get some bright sunlight in your eyes right around the time of sunset. It doesn't have to be exactly at sunset. It could be in the late afternoon and evening. But it's been shown now in studies on humans, and I'll provide a link to at least one of those studies, that by getting some bright light in your eyes, ideally from sunlight, in the late afternoon and evening, and of course the timing will vary depending on time of year and where you are located on the planet, but facing the sun around sunset, you don't actually have to see the sun cross down below the horizon, but facing the sun around that time for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, or even less, even 2 to 5 minutes, can adjust the sensitivity of neurons in your retina that communicate light information to the brain and make it such that in the evening, when you use artificial lights, they aren't going to have as much of a detrimental effect on your dopamine system and for impairing your sleep. Okay, so the idea is as much bright light, ideally from sunlight, but also from artificial sources from the time you wake up in the morning until the evening, maybe around 6 or 7 o'clock, maybe in the summer months a little bit later, and then really try and get as little bright light in your eyes as you can in the evening and nighttime hours. And ideally, you would also get some sunlight exposure right around the time of sunset or in the late afternoon. Go outside, take your sunglasses off. Don't try and do this through a windshield or through a window. It will not work. You have to get outside. If you're under an overhang, at least try and get some direct sunlight in your eyes at that time. And that will adjust the sensitivity of your retina such that bright artificial lights or artificial lights of any kind that you're exposed to in the evening and in the late hours of the night won't have as much of a detrimental effect. That said, if you go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, try and keep the lights dim. Many people have asked whether or not, for instance, a nightlight or a flashlight is going to have as much of a negative effect. This is very straightforward. If you think about it, if you shine a light at something, you can see into your environment. If you've ever been camping or you've walked with a flashlight, you can see things around you that you wouldn't otherwise, of course. But if you were to shine that light in your eyes, it would be far brighter. So yes, of course, if you get up in the middle of the night and you can use your phone flashlight to illuminate the environment that you're in so that you can safely go to where you need to go and then back to bed, that's going to be far better than turning on the lights or, of course, shining light in your eyes. Right? So the idea is bright, bright, bright in the morning and throughout the day, and as dim and dark as possible at night. And that afternoon light viewing provides sort of what I call a Netflix inoculation that will allow you to adjust your retinal sensitivity and give you a little bit more flexibility in terms of allowing some nighttime light exposure without the detrimental effects. If you're not optimizing your sleep, and if you are using or being exposed to light rather at the wrong times of the day-night cycle, that is going to make it very hard for the other sorts of practices that relate to happiness to have their full impact. So the backdrop, or I would say the kind of landscape of your chemicals and your hormones, is powerfully controlled by not just the brightness of light, but the timing of light. And your exposure to light, in particular, your exposure to light to your eyes, is something that you have a lot of control over. You don't have absolute control, but you have a lot of control over. And it's been proven that even these small steps, which are completely cost-free, they require just a few minutes of time, but no purchase of product or anything else, can allow you to greatly adjust your neurochemistry and your hormones in the direction of better mood, better sleep, and happiness.